All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're taking a hard look at the military balance between the United States and China as we look towards 2025. This isn't about hype or speculation. We're going to break down the actual numbers, the core strategies, and the technology that's changing the game, all based on the latest data. So let's get to it.
This whole situation really boils down to two very different players. On one side, you have the United States, the established global superpower for, decades, with a technological reach that's unmatched. And on the other side, you have China, which the Pentagon itself calls the pacing challenger. Now, that term is really key. It means China is the only country out there with the economic and industrial might to truly systematically challenge America's long-held position.
So let's get one thing straight. Our goal here isn't to just declare a winner. The real story, the one that's keeping defense planners up at night, is all about the rate of change. Yeah, the US is still on top in many ways, but the gap between it and China is closing faster than anything we've ever seen in modern history. That is the dynamic we're really digging into today. Okay, so here's how we're going to tackle this. We've broken it down into 4 key parts. We'll kick things off with a high-level look by the numbers. Then we'll zoom right into the most critical battleground, the fight for the Pacific. After that, we'll get into the technology race, and finally, we'll cover the ultimate trump card, the nuclear imbalance.
First up, Section 1, by the numbers. Before we can even start talking about strategy or cool tech, we got to establish a baseline. These are the raw figures, the quantitative facts that really frame this entire conversation. Okay, so right off the bat, this table tells a fascinating story of asymmetry. You can see China has a clear lead in manpower. It's the largest standing army in the world and in the sheer number of ships in its navy. But then you just flip the coin. The US has a gigantic lead in aircraft and a defense budget that's more than 3 times bigger. This tells you one thing right away. Headline numbers can be really deceptive. We've got to dig a whole lot deeper.
Let's just zero in on that budget for a second. This chart does a fantastic job of showing the incredible scale of American defense spending. It's staggering. That money funds a global network of bases, more training for pilots, and more advanced tech. All those qualitative things that numbers alone just can't show. But there's a pretty big however here. Most analysts are convinced China's actual spending is way higher than their official numbers. So while the US advantage is massive, the real gap is probably a bit smaller than what you're seeing here.
So let's talk about China's biggest flex, sheer manpower. We're talking over 2 million active duty personnel. That number gives them a depth for regional operations and security at home that really no other country on Earth can match. It's the foundation of their military's massive scale. But then you flip the script, and you get to air power. Here, the US has a staggering 4-to-1 advantage in total military aircraft. And look, this isn't just about fighter jets. This is about the cargo planes, the tankers, the bombers, the whole system that allows for global logistics and power projection. It really highlights a totally different military philosophy. Achieve dominance through technology and air power, not just boots on the ground.
All right, so that brings us to our second section, where we see how these numbers actually play out in the most critical arena of competition, the fight for the Pacific. This is where the spreadsheets meet the realities of geography and strategy. Honestly, this is the main event.
To understand the naval battle for the Pacific, you absolutely have to understand this concept, the first island chain. Just look at the map. It's this string of islands that basically fences in China's coastline. China's entire naval strategy is built around one single objective: control the waters inside this chain, and, in a conflict, make it impossible for the US Navy to operate there freely. They are designing a military to completely dominate their own backyard. And this really lays out the two completely different mindsets at play. Think of it this way. The US Navy is built for global power projection. It's designed to go anywhere in the world at any time. Its strength is in the massive size and technological superiority of its ships. China's Navy, on the other hand, is purpose-built for what's called anti-access/area denial. The whole point is to make it way too dangerous for the US Navy to even get close. Its strength comes from having more ships in the region and the huge advantage of fighting right on its home turf with support from land.
So what's the centerpiece of American naval power? Well, people call them floating fortresses for a reason. This is talking about the US fleet of 11 nuclear-powered supercarriers. Every single one of these ships is like a moving piece of American territory, carrying an air force more powerful than most countries have. For now, their ability to project power across the globe is simply unmatched.
So if we're breaking down the key US advantages, you have to start with those 11 supercarriers. Then you've got the submarine fleet. The US has about 64 subs, and here's the critical part. They are all nuclear-powered.
That gives them incredible stealth and basically unlimited range. And finally, there's experience. The US Navy has been operating non-stop all over the world for decades. You just can't buy that kind of institutional knowledge. It's a massive, intangible asset. But make no mistake, China has built an incredibly formidable home team that is designed specifically to counter those American strengths. They have the world's largest navy by the number of ships, which means they could potentially swarm a regional conflict. They're churning out highly advanced warships, like the Type 055 destroyer, that many experts consider a peer to anything the US has. Their submarine force has these ultra-quiet diesel-electric boats that are perfect for lurking in those shallow coastal waters. And behind it all, a world-class shipbuilding industry that's building these ships at a speed the world has literally never seen before.
And all that brings us to Section 3, the technology race. Because as we've already seen, the number of ships or soldiers on a spreadsheet only tells you part of the story. The real competition, the fight for that qualitative edge, in the air, in space, and with new weapons, is arguably even more important right now.
Let's start in the air with fifth-generation stealth fighters. As of right now, in 2025, the US holds a massive, decisive lead. It's not even close. The US operates hundreds of F-35s and F-22s. China's only real equivalent is the J-20. Now, it's a capable jet, for sure, but it just hasn't been produced in the same numbers, and more importantly, it's not really considered a peer when it comes to the sensors, the stealth, and the data fusion that makes these modern jets so dominant. But, and this is a huge but, that's today. That's 5th gen. When we look to the future, to the race for the next generation of fighters, suddenly it's a dead heat. That huge technological gap that defined the last 30 years, when it comes to the future of air combat, it has pretty much vanished.
And here's the wildest part. Both countries are chasing the exact same revolutionary idea for the future. It's not about one single super fighter anymore. It's about a system of systems. The idea is you'll have a manned 6th-gen fighter acting like a quarterback, controlling swarms of autonomous drones. And the most crucial point here is that both the US with its NGAD program and China with its own projects already have prototypes in the air. They are developing this future side by side.
Okay, now we have to talk about an area where the script is completely flipped: hypersonic missiles. We're talking about weapons that fly at more than 5 times the speed of sound and can maneuver, which makes them almost impossible to stop. And let's be blunt, China is the clear leader here. They have combat-ready operational systems like the DF-17. The US, meanwhile, is still in the late stages of testing its own versions. This is a critical Chinese advantage designed specifically to threaten those high-value American assets like aircraft carriers.
And this race isn't just happening on Earth, it's in orbit. Just look at this number. A 900% increase in China's satellite fleet in just under a decade. Think about that. That explosive growth has given them the eyes in the sky to find and track US forces, like those carriers, anywhere in the world. Space is now a contested battlefield, which is exactly why the US is scrambling to develop systems to counter this new reality.
That brings us to our final, and frankly, most sobering section: the nuclear imbalance. This is the domain of the ultimate weapon, where the stakes are nothing short of existential.
As you can see from this chart, the numerical difference is just staggering. The United States has an arsenal of just over 5,000 nuclear warheads. That's a legacy of the Cold War. In contrast, China, which for a long time just wanted a small, minimum credible deterrent, is now estimated to have around 600. But, and this is probably the single most important takeaway of this whole topic, after a certain point, the raw numbers on a chart stop mattering. The conclusion from the source material is that China's arsenal, while much, much smaller, is now without a doubt large enough to ensure mutually assured destruction. What that means is they have enough survivable weapons to guarantee a catastrophic retaliatory strike on the US, no matter who might strike first. So while the numerical gap is huge, the deterrent effect, that's now been achieved by both sides.
And so that leaves us with this final question to think about. We've seen a global power built for reach and a regional power built for dominance. We've seen technological leads that are massive in some areas and basically non-existent in others. And we've seen a huge nuclear imbalance that still ends in a stalemate. In this complex new world, where the gaps are closing and destruction is mutually assured, what does it actually mean for one country to be militarily superior to another? That's the question that will define global security for decades to come.